Glad to have you here. We are joined, as always, by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, a James Beard Award nominee. The group includes Eat Bar in Arlington, also Evening Star Cafe and Planet Wine in Delray. Greg, it's always good to see you. What is on tap this week?
So this week we have a Quebecois beer coming down from Montreal area. It's called Rigor Mortis ABT, and it's from Dieu du Ciel. Dieu du Ciel is, like God in heaven, is the exclamation, and actually it's Dieu du Ciel with an exclamation point. I suppose this is the what they hope you exclaim when you taste their beers, and most do, because Dieu du Ciel has long been just on the forefront of fantastic craft beer. You talk about like beer tourism. Any trip to Montreal is not complete without a trip to the brew pub that they have there. They built a separate production facility in Saint-Jérôme, outside of the city, and they just have been crafting outstanding beers for a long time. Very well known for Péché Mortel, Mortal Sin, a strong stout brewed with fair trade coffee. And while this seems like a trope, that is everywhere at this point, they were some of the first brewers to really go all the way with a coffee imperial stout. So they've been at the beginnings of craft beer and pushing the envelope of craft beer. Quebecois, they tend to be influenced by Belgian-style beers as well. I think Unibrew has proven that from Chambly, outside of Montreal, makers of fine Belgian-style ales. And so Dieu du Ciel does lots of things, but one of the things they do exceptionally well is Belgian-style ales. And the Rigor Mortis ABT is a sort of Belgian-style quadruple. So this is one for all you who love Rochefort 10, or if you ever get your hands on Westfaletter 12, these big St. Bernardus ABT 12, big, bold, strong, malty, fruity, spicy, vinous beers. This is their entree into that category.
And they don't have to travel as far to get
No,
there.
yeah, no, it's not too far away. Very, very complex, heady. Well, exactly what we'd expect from this style of beer.
That is really good.
Beautiful nuttiness in the nose, lots of malt character coming through. Almost has like a slight hazelnut quality. There's hints of cocoa. On the palate, you get great dark fruit, almost a kind of sweet meets sour cherry quality, red wine notes. Almost appears to be vanilla sweet from oak, although there's no oak aging on this at all.
And as I would expect here at Church Key, you've got that at just the right temperature,
Yeah,
right? Because,
yeah,
I mean, if
55 degrees.
If that was 40 degrees, your taste buds would just seize up and you wouldn't
be able to get anything, yeah. And also that's why it comes out of the glass so intensely. This is about 10.5% alcohol. Another thing to note is that Rigor Mortis, they have a line of Belgian-style beers they release under the Rigor Mortis label. The ABT is the only one that they send to the United States of them, the 10.5% one, and they brew it only once a year. So it just came in. It's fantastic. You'll see it around town a little bit in small amounts. And they actually brew this in January, so it's probably packaged, February, and so it's got a little bit of age on it, which is great because when it's young, it can be a little bit too fruity and a little bit boozy. This is mellowed into a nice whole. ABT is the standard designation for typically the strongest beer made by the monks in the old days. They would always make different levels of beers as far as strength goes, and typically the lowest alcohol beers would be their everyday table beers that all the monks would enjoy with food and around the clock. And then the stronger beers would be reserved for the higher ranking officials from the monasteries and the abbeys, and so the abbot would often get to indulge in the finest of the ales, and therefore they would often label these strong, beautiful beers as ABT, as indicated for the abbot.
The man has been sticking it to the little guy for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. But now everybody can have these.
There are a lot of Canadian beers and Canadian, to me, sort of styles of Canadian beers that you never see down here, that I had never seen before until I was on a trip to Ottawa. And good strong to beer. I mean, we just, what we mainly get down here is the macros, and that's one cool thing about going to Montreal is the old Molson, the original. I think the original Molson brewery is there.
Yeah.
But
and then you have Labatt's and all those. And that's to your point. There's those macro ones, but then there's lots and lots of small Canadian breweries from British Columbia to Quebec, crafting amazing beers just like their neighbors to the south. And this is something you should seek out while you're there. I mean, especially in Quebec, it's so continental European there. You know, the food scene is incredible. The beer scene is fantastic. So you really can, enjoy you can really get this beautiful restaurant experiences that are inviting craft beer to their tables. And they were doing it up there in large part before a lot of others were. Yeah. You know, another great Quebecois brewery is called Les Trous du Diable. And we're seeing their beers more and more in the United States now. But really, there's plenty from all over Canada. Hopfenstark is another fantastic brewery. But to your point, more and more are trickling into the U.S. But if you go there, it's astounding how many different little brewers there are.
Yeah.
It's cool.
We have a question. We will get to that in a moment. But first, what would you pair this with?
This is one of those easy ones. This is your dinner beer. Goes with lots of things. You know, I love this with all sorts of meats, game birds, duck. It's beautiful with duck. But the cool thing about this too is with the malt character, because it's red, winey, and vinous, so it can sauce your steak and your duck, your lamb, things like that. But the malt sweetness that's come through, it almost has like a marzipan effect to it. I think lends itself to desserts just as well. And also kind of classically, one thing we did, our most popular flatbread preparation that we've had at Church Key since day one, and it'll never go away, is our fig and prosciutto flatbread. And one of the reasons that this flatbread came about was to pair to the rich, malty, strong, dark Belgian-style beers like Rigor Mortis or Chimay Blue or Guden Carolus Classic, which is one of the beers we have exclusively on draft at Church Key. And it's beautiful. We have the figs, which obviously we're getting lots of figgy qualities in this beer, so that makes sense. Prosciutto, salt balancing against this sweetness, and a little bit of fruit comes out of that. Gorgonzola, cremificata base, which is a creamy gorgonzola, not as funky, but enough funk and salt, tang to balance against the sweetness. So, you know, it also works with big cheeses, salty meats as well.
I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously, but if you have not tried one of the tasting dinners downstairs at Birch and Barley, you really should. I don't think I think they're reasonably priced. You get 6, 7, 8 beers and matching courses. It's so hard. Usually they bring you the beer first before the food. It is so hard not to drink all of the sample before the food gets there. And it's educational, and it's a lot of fun for a special occasion. You know, I recommend it.
I think they're really fun.
We're gonna get an argument.
And the cool thing, go on. The other thing that's cool about it too is like we do these special brewer dinners where we have like the brewer come in, and those are the big ones. You know, we have like a full room just for that dinner, and we typically do these on Monday nights. But nightly at Birch and Barley, we offer a 5-course tasting menu with beer rather than with wine. We can do wine, but you know, mostly with beer first, and it's amazing. We took a gamble on that almost 4 years ago when we opened Birch and Barley. You know, we're like, we're going to do a beer tasting menu, and people are like, a tasting menu with beer nightly, not wine? And they thought we were crazy, but we did it. We still do it. We love it. And I'm always blown away by how many people do the tasting menu, and they should. It's the best way to taste lots of different foods, lots of different beers, and really get the experience we offer.
Which you really started over at Rustico.
And I actually started at Rustico.
The first time I ever did it with you. Yeah.
And that was just like, that was a real testing thing. It was like, who would possibly want to do this for this long time and listen to me talk about everything? But luckily, guys like you did, and now more people are into it, which is fantastic.
We have a question from Earl Holman, a loyal, thank you, Earl, Beer of the Week viewer. And Earl says, have you ever used a TQ or Tiku glass for drinking beer? And is the Tiku glass truly, quote, one glass for all types of beer, end quote? And Earl says there's a lot of hype right now surrounding the glass. I'm wondering whether it's worth shelling out some bucks on eBay to get one.
So as with all glassware, there is an element of beer glassware. There's always going to be an element of marketing to it. Now, that said, Teku glasses basically look like smaller wine glasses. They have a beautiful stem to them. They come up, they curl out like this, they shape up, and then they flare just a little at the top. So they really look like almost like wine tasting glasses. So yes, those glasses are fantastic for pretty much any beer. As my friend Garrett Oliver always says, if you need one glass to have in your home for beer, it's a big Cabernet wine glass. Because beers are as complex and as noble as wines when they're well crafted. And so using a wine glass will get you at those flavors just as easily. And in many ways, this goblet we're drinking from right now echoes the same sentiments. You've got the stem, allows you to swirl. Swirling charges up the aromatics, allows them to jump out of the glass. You've got this wide bowl, so you can get in there and really experience the aromatics. One of the reasons that, as you know, why we serve this at 55 degrees is that it's a richer beer. It's weighted down. So at 55, we encourage heat, encourages evaporation that allows the aromatic compounds to come to evaporate, to jump out of the glass. At 40 degrees, that ain't happening, and so you smell it, it smells dead. So this, it really lets it out. So the Teku glass is fantastic, and if you can get your hands on them, try to. They are pricey, and truth be told, a great wine glass will do the same. Pretty much the same thing. I'm sure people will disagree with me on exactly that.
Especially the people who make the Teku glasses.
It will. And it will, just to be fair and honest about it.
Test them out.
Teku, yeah, exactly. A Teku glass is so named because it was a collaboration designed by Teo Muso. That's the T of the Teku. And his friend who's a kind of a sensory analyst named Kowalska. So Teo and Kowalska, Teku. And Teo owns Birra Baladen in Piedmont. They make fantastic beers. I think we've done some of them before in Italy. And so he wanted to design a glass that he thought was perfect for his beers and for beers in general. And he has. It's a great, great glass. But it can be a little bit on the pricier side. So, watch out for that. And then the other thing I always say too is I love examining beers and drinking them out of these glasses. Tulips, goblets, wine glasses, fantastic. But sometimes you just want a pint of something. And I mean, I know a lot of people are trying to get away from that, but many people still do. And I think there is something to be said for the tradition of just a pint or like a Pilsner flute of a Pilsner can be fun as well. And, I do think that glasses like the goblet, the Teku, and the tulip are best for tasting beer. But it's fun to, like at Church Cambridge and Barley, we have nearly 15 different types of shaped glasses because, and I think they all work to service the aromas and tastes of each of the beers, but it's also just fun and it's a window on the past because all of these glasses have history, be it cultural or economic.
And a Cabernet from, say, Martinelli in Sonoma, it still tastes good in a styrofoam coffee cup.
Yeah, that one does. That one for sure does. Yeah.
All right, if you've got a question for Greg, thank you, Earl. The email is right down here. It's beeroftheweek@WTOP.com. Greg, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Everyone, please always do drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.